Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Tina Jha, you're watching Perspective. As Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman prepares to present the Union Budget 2026 in just a few days from now, expectations are running high across sectors of the economy. Industry bodies, businesses and stakeholders are closely watching for measures that could shape India's growth, boost investment and also generate employment in the next fiscal year. Amid global uncertainties and evolving trade dynamics, including concerns over US tariffs, the Indian economy has demonstrated remarkable strength and resilience, maintaining its position as one of the fastest growing major economies, with growth forecasts ranging between 7.3 and 7.4% by various agencies. The Union Budget 26-27 is expected to build further on this momentum, also strengthen India's economic resilience and take the country a step closer to realizing the vision of a Viksit Bharat. We are joined today by two distinguished experts to discuss what they expect to be the key focus areas of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's budget on the 1st of February, which, by the way, falls on a Sunday. And I think it's also a rare first in the history of presentation of union budgets. So let me begin by introducing the guest to you. I'm delighted to welcome Colonel Suhail Zaidi, retired. He's Director General, Manufacturers Association for Information Technology. Colonel Zaidi, thank you for your time. Welcome to the program. I'm also pleased to welcome Dr. Ranjit Mehta. He's Secretary General, PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Dr. Mehta, always a pleasure to have you join us on the program.
Thank you.
Let's begin the program today with you. Over the years, we've seen continuity as far as Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's budget is concerned. This is going to be her 9th consecutive budget, Dr. Mehta. What do you expect in terms of the key focus areas that the Finance Minister will have, given the state of the Indian economy, but also given the challenges that persist in the global economic landscape? How do you see the Finance Minister approaching, or what direction do you see the Finance Minister giving to this budget?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tina. In fact, thank you for having me here. In Finance Minister's budget in the past around 9 years, what we have seen is, number one is stability in policy. That we have always noticed, and predictability in taxation and momentum in execution. I mean, that has been the hallmark of Modi government so far. And budget 2026 is definitely at a time when there are global headwinds, there are geopolitical challenges. There's a new phenomenon called economic self-interest by various nations. So I think that despite having that, what we really see is, number one, there will be a great push on the infrastructure. So when we talk about infrastructure, then definitely the physical infrastructure, digital infrastructure, and the social infrastructure. I mean, there'll be great push, because all these things are very important. When economy grows, as we are still the fastest growing economy in the world, then the first stress that is seen is infrastructure. And when our infrastructure is world class and seamless, then in that case, it brings efficiency in our logistics. It makes us globally competitive. Also, it attracts the attention of global investors. So that is number one. And secondly, we feel that right now, due to this US tariffs and other things, I think our MSMEs, more than 70 million MSMEs in our country, they are the hardest hit, especially the textile sector, footwear sector, automobile engineering. All these sectors have been hardest hit. And we feel that India has a target of around $2 trillion by 2030 on export-led growth. Therefore, it is very important, despite having our very strong domestic consumption, which has really made our economy very resilient. We need to look for the new markets. Right now, from the current established market like United States, we are exploring new markets. We had some really good proactive approach from the government of India, like signing FTA with the UK, signing FTA with Oman, and also recently signing FTA with New Zealand. And what we see in maybe next few days is with EU, I think this is going to be the mother of all the FTAs that we have signed. If India and EU they sign the FTA, then this is going to be around a quarter of the global economy. This will
That's
be
right.
very very big FTA, more than 2 billion consumers here. So we feel that MSME sector is another focus where the government will have, especially getting cheaper or reasonable finance and easy access to the finance, and also access to the technological upgradation. As we are about to sign FTA with EU, I think CBAM and sustainability will be the one factor where our MSMEs will have to be very very, they need to upgrade themselves to that level so that they can export to a EU market. So sustainability is another very critical area where government's handholding or some kind of fund for these upgradation is there. And third, I feel is agriculture. Still, 50% of our people, they are dependent on agriculture and infrastructure, and on agriculture technology, because we have very small farmers who are having land holding less than 1 hectare. I think that how we can increase the productivity from the same land, because we cannot increase the land. So therefore, what we have in hand is to make sure that we have the right technological intervention to increase the productivity from the same land. So that will be very critical because India still depends on monsoons. So I think that irrigation infrastructure, all these things will be very, very critical. Then health infrastructure and digital infrastructure, they'll be very, very important as the world is moving towards, digitization. Whole world is today, I think, globally digitized. I think India cannot, be behind. So therefore, there'll be great push for that
Okay.
also. Yeah.
So
So these
you've
are
covered a lot of ground as far as expectations are concerned. You've mentioned continuity, stability, which have been the hallmark of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's budget. But most importantly, given the volatility in the global economic landscape, the fact that the Indian economy has remained resilient, we continue to grow rapidly. Remarkable forecasts which predict the range of 7.3 to 7.4%, as we've discussed earlier as well, by various agencies. But coming to the expectations and the sector-specific expectations, Colonel Zaidi, let me bring you in here. What are some of the expectations of the IT sector from the government this time around that you've conveyed to the government and that you expect the Finance Minister to include in her budget speech on the 1st?
You see, we are a sectoral association and our focus, as you rightly brought out, is mainly on the IT industry, and they are also focusing on mobile is one of our key focus area. And what we would want here is, and what we have recommended is that actually the mobile phone is a success story for our country. We have witnessed a growth from around 10% share to 49% from 2015 to 2025. So now we have in a way shown that this is a success story and should be facilitated to take it to a higher level. See, the PLI scheme, when it was introduced, mobile industry achieved the target of 1.4x in 4 years itself, whereas there were other PLI schemes also which were not so successful. So, but now we are at a strategic crossroad because the PLI scheme is about to finish in March 2026. And what we are recommending is a large-scale mobile manufacturing scheme, basically to ensure that we move from assembling to deep manufacturing. So government has already brought out a component scheme, but we need to have certain duties reduced and some facilitation for the manufacturing of mobile phones so that we are able to achieve the target that we are talking of.
That's right. In fact, let me also discuss about the high input costs that often electronics manufacturers talk about. They've highlighted concerns over import dependencies, and which at times faces problems because of the global complexities, the geopolitical situations, and so on. What specific budget measures, Colonel, would you recommend, or would you suggest, which can strengthen or which can take care of the domestic value chains without impacting the manufacturers much?
See, we have already recommended duty reduction in certain components which are not being manufactured in our country. So, for example, we have requested for a reduction in duty for components, basic custom duty for components like camera module, display assembly, connectors. These are things which will grow as we proceed ahead, but right now the duty is slightly high. We have requested for a reduction in duty. There are certain components like inductor. Now, inductor coils, there's an inverted duty structure because of so many things happening. And what I mean to say here is that inductor, if you import as a full assembly, it is at 10% duty, but if you import the components of inductor, the duty is 15%. So we have requested request to the government has been to support the large scale manufacturing of the mobile phones. If that is in place, we move from assembly to the deep manufacturing, we will be able to achieve the target which we have set of 130 billion USD per year by 2030.
That's right. I'll come to the point on the MSMEs. Dr. Mehta, you spoke about how there are MSME associations which have, and I read some other experts also calling for easier credit, lower compliance burden, but most importantly also faster payments. So at a time when we've seen MSME being a significant focus of the Finance Minister's budget each year, and there have been several policy measures to help and support them as well. But for the moment, when there are demands of easier credit, lower compliance burden, faster payments, which of these do you think require urgent budget intervention, and which the Finance Minister could perhaps include in the budget 2026?
In fact, government has done a laudable effort, and they have really come out with some very excellent schemes which can really cater to the credit needs of the MSMEs. One such scheme is, of course, a credit card facility. What we are really saying is to give it really execution at the right spit at the ground is instead of calling it a credit card, we can say it a micro, credit facility. Because the moment you say credit card, then banks sometimes they may tend to charge very heavy interest from the MSME. What we really request to the government is, this is an excellent scheme which gives 5 lakh credit, 5 lakh rupees micro credit facility to a micro enterprise. So for them, it's very easy to access the finance, because for them, they don't need a big finance. They need a small amount. For them, they can easily access. But what we have requested is, as far as the execution is concerned, we have requested that there should be cap of around not more than 15% on the interest to be charged from them. And they should not be in the credit card facility. They should be charged not more than 15%, and it should be called micro finance facility. Second, another very good scheme the government of India had come out is definitely the fund of fund, 50,000 crore rupees fund of fund. But what we have seen is, because this fund of fund was initially for, investing in the equity by government. From this fund of fund, any MSME which goes for listing, then 10 to 15% if the government can invest in that particular MSME based on the total criteria which the government sets. So what will happen is that people will have confidence in that particular company that government is also giving. I think that was the basic idea of this. If this could be really, executed in the same manner. So that is another thing. Third thing is MSMEs, because MSMEs, they are small, businesses. So most of the time, when they go to the bank, then if there could be uniformity in the in their documents, all the banks, if they could be uniform documents, because after all the banks, if there could be a single uniform document for for taking the loans, and maximum work can be done through digital, pathways, then
Right.
that will really save a lot of time. It will also bring the cost of execution. So, and fourth thing, what we have seen is there's another very good scheme by Government of India, that is credit guarantee scheme for the credit flow of MSMEs. So they have also increased the credit flow from 5 to 10 crores, 10 to 20 crores for small businesses. I think this was an excellent scheme. The idea of this scheme was so that, when MSME goes for loan to the bank, they do not ask for collateral. So, because there is a credit guarantee scheme for them. But what we have noticed, and many of our members, many of the industry people, they have reported that still bank are actually insisting on the collateral. So therefore, the very purpose of this particular scheme is defeated. So what we have suggested is, if for execution purpose, if there could be one helpline, maybe with RBI or anywhere, whatever the government deems fit. So there could be a nodal officer where the MSME, if he faces any such problem, that can be really, reported to. I think that these are the small things which will help in execution. And secondly, I think very important is the startups. There have been great push by the government for startups, and we just celebrated 10 years of our Startup India. And today we have the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, with more than 150,000 startups in our country. And startups have become the hotbed of innovation. Now, with the semiconductor ecosystem that is being created in the country, we have really moved very, very fast on this. And this time we are hoping that for semiconductor and AI, they will get a special fund and special outlay to promote this sector. I think
In fact,
that
since you spoke about innovation, let me get in a perspective from Colonel Zaidi on some of the demands that the industry has been making, especially for greater support to R&D, to design-led manufacturing. Colonel, do you think the focus now should be more on innovation incentives rather than just the scale-driven manufacturing that has happened so far, and that we are now at a stage when we can take such stable measures which can expand and enhance the scope of innovation-led startups?
Yes, definitely. So, see, the challenge here is that the large MNCs have the ecosystem and the wherewithal to have the R&D and the innovations done. But the challenge which comes there is the IP, which doesn't stay in India. What we have been propagating is that have ecosystems built in wherein the smaller and the MSMEs are able to utilize the facility, the ecosystem, so that they are able to develop something at a nominal cost, because MSMEs cannot afford a large scale R&D ecosystem on their own. If there is a system in place where they just plug in, have their products developed by a set of experts, what we have been we have been propagating is, why not get educational institutes who have experts in terms of their professors and the PhD students who are trying to build up in that field. So if we are able to develop something like this, wherein the MSMEs are able to exploit the ecosystem and have their products developed and the IP remains here, that would be a great service to the nation.
In fact, Colonel, since our ambition is to help India position itself as a preferred destination for electronics and IT manufacturing, what are some of the urgent steps that are needed? So capital, of course, is something that is required to set up that kind of an ecosystem and strengthen it day by day. But in terms of policy support, in terms of incentives, what do you think needs a specific push from the government, especially when we are talking about expectations from the budget, and this budget is expected to take us a little closer to our Viksit Bharat vision. So that also keeping in mind, what kind of growth-oriented measures do you expect the Finance Minister to spell out?
See, Dr. Mehta has already talked about the infrastructure requirements, and if they are in place and the ecosystem gets built up in a way that there is a seamless movement of the policies, See, I'll bring out a challenge here which may not be directly related to the budget. What happens is when the policies are made, they are made with very, very good intentions.
That's right.
But on the ground, when they are implemented, that the last man, the interpretation changes. We need to have a mechanism where the interpretation remains the same. The welfare scheme or whatever is the intention of making the policy, that should remain same till the end of it. It may not be directly related to the budget, but this is a very important aspect that we have been trying to say. If there's X requirement at the policy scheme, and but once it gets to the downmost officer in charge, it could be X plus 10 because of the interpretations are not very clear. So we have been working on it and the government is pretty supportive. One to one, they are able to resolve it. But why should we come to a situation where it is required to be resolved? It should be by default.
That's right. Dr. Mehta, how are we taking this up with the government? How is the government responding to these concerns? Because as Colonel rightly pointed out, there is no questioning of the intent. These policies are remarkable on paper, but if not implemented effectively, if not implemented word by word, it loses its sheen and impact.
Yeah, Tina, the best thing about this government, what we have experienced is, I mean, they are very, very proactive. If you go with a certain industry challenge, they will immediately look into it. Anywhere, in any department, I think this has been, all through the government departments. I mean, this is a hallmark of this government. Now, the thing is, we are in a federal structure and land, for instance, land and electricity, even environmental clearances, sometimes they are the state subjects. So land is a big challenge for setting up a factory. And today, I think the cost of land is so high. So that I think like earlier it used to be special economic zones. And if you work on, plug and play method where there can be industrial clusters where a person needs to go and start his factory maybe the next day. Those kind of systems we have to build. I think there the focus needs. I mean, today government's focus is on definitely in Make in India. We want to be the hub, manufacturing hub for the world. And we want to be the part of the global value chain. So in this case, one is definitely the infrastructure that government has been really focusing on this. Second, I mean, infrastructure in the sense for industries, how the industrial clusters can be created in various states. There, I feel that state government's participation is very, very important. We have seen of late that any state government which is very, very proactive, we have seen that investments are coming there and they are working on it. Employment generation is happening. So therefore, I think that it is a two-way. It is both a partnership. So therefore, the role of state government is very, very important. Otherwise, the policies of the government are definitely very, 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 very good, and they are long-term policies. You rightly said that this budget will set tone for Viksit Bharat 2047, and that's the direction. That is the meaning of stability in the policy. So
In
therefore,
fact, as we progress towards our Viksit Bharat goal, Colonel Zaidi, as we wrap up the conversation, I'd like to understand your views on this. We've seen this government not just announce policy measures, we've seen this government also take bold reformative measures, measures that have brought about significant transformation in key sectors that contribute majorly to our economy. Now, the kind of resilience and the strength that the Indian economy has shown, we need to sustain the momentum. And for that, even if we need major structural reforms, if you could give us a sense of what kind of structural reforms, in fact, would take us closer to realizing goals that we have set for various structures, in this case, the electronics and IT, if you want to take up, but in the larger context of our 2047 goal.
See, I would not suggest any major structural changes in the electronics industry. Mobile phone has been a success story, and it is based on the structure which is already existing. We are now the world's third largest exporter of mobile phones. What we need to do now is build upon it. from assembling to deep manufacturing is what is required, and continue what has been promised and what has been in place. Just keep building on it. And see, the way things work, even for China and other countries, they have first started with assembling, getting more of inputs from other places, and then value addition has increased from the basics. And that we are at that basic stage. Now we have to add value addition. Mobile phone is a very good success story, and we have to build upon it so that we are able to prove that the full deep manufacturing happens in our country. One more thing that we are also advocating is the repair. Worldwide, repairing is a huge industry. We from MATE have advocated something called ERSO, Electronic Repair Service Outsourcing. Through this, we intend to get almost $20 billion market annually to repairs only in our country. It's a new proposal. We are working on it. MATE has been very supportive. We will be able to succeed in that as well.
Okay, Dr. Mehta, we have a little time, so I would like to bring on one concern that the exporters have been raising, and this pertains to the global slowdown, the trade barriers, the threats of the US tariffs as well. Do you think the budget has scope to include some targeted measures to perhaps look at these concerns and address them effectively?
Yeah, we have suggested, there was a scheme called interest equalization scheme for pre and post shipment for the exporters. There was a interest subvention of 2% and 3% for the 3% for the manufacturers and 2% for merchandise. What we have suggested it now, since our economy is also service led, we have around 54% is service. So therefore, we have requested that in this scheme, if this scheme starts again, which we have recommended that it should be given to the exporters, in that case, service sector should also be included in the interest subvention. And this scheme should be started. Definitely, government has made a export mission. I'm sure that it will be part of this. And we are hoping that government will definitely, because we need to focus on exports, $2 trillion exports by 2030. Therefore, we feel that some kind of handholding and financial support for marketing access initiatives to be there in this budget 2026-27.
Absolutely. Let's hope the finance minister is able to include some of these suggestions and recommendations that industry experts and all stakeholders have made to her in the pre-budget consultation meetings. But what she finally includes is something that we will know only on the 1st of February. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the program, sharing your thoughts, your views with us and our viewers. And to you viewers, thank you very much for your time as well. Time allows us to take up only that much on the program today. Thank you so much.
संसद टीवी के और भी प्रोग्राम्स देखने के लिए सब्सक्राइब करें हमारा यूट्यूब चैनल और हाँ, इन्हें लाइक और शेयर करना ना भूलें।